because of the fearful avoidant attachment style, it can be really hard to trust people, and because of that, makes you keep pushing people away. I am Pauline, and I am so happy you are here, because trust for a fearful avoidant can actually be quite an abstract concept. What does that even mean? Um, so in this video, we are going to talk about trust and trusting others and life in general. If you struggle with the fearful avoidant attachment style, chances are you have a fearful avoidant parent. And at least you have had a childhood where your trust was betrayed again and again and again. And that can be in so many different ways. So many different ways. So it could be the trust that you innately have as a child, trusting your parent to take care of you, and they didn't in a loving and unconditional and safe way. So they got angry inconsistently when you didn't expect it. And they lashed out at you, they were critical, they were judgmental. All of that breaks trust, because it is really hard to trust that somebody is there for you, will react in the same way consistently, in a loving way, is there really to support you, is there for your needs and your wants and taking them seriously. So there's trust in that way. But then also there's a lot of parents who just sadly don't take children that seriously, in the sense that what children tell their parents, um, it feels like they have a right to tell others because it's their child. So that could be you telling your mom something that you struggle with or actually are ashamed of, and before you know it, all your aunts and uncles know it, and everybody seems to know it. That's also breaking trust. So it could be in the small, it could be in the big things, but fearful avoidants tend to have this trust wound, and even further than that, a betrayal wound. So trusting that what you say cannot be used against you, will not be used against you. That is also something a lot of fearful avoidants struggle with, because being vulnerable can be used against you. That is what a lot of fearful avoidant parents do unconsciously. They don't really, I think a lot of them don't deliberately use that, but they have a problem with vulnerability. And so when you are vulnerable, they will kind of use that to get the upper hand. When you are vulnerable, they feel powerful, and fearful avoidant parents want to feel powerful, or want to be in control at least. So it feels like you have to be a certain way to not be betrayed, and you can't be vulnerable, you can't say dumb things, you can't come across as dumb or incapable, because that can be used against you. You have to perform, you have to prove that you are worthy all the time, because every time you fail in that, you say something that isn't perfect, pretty much, that can be used against you. So betrayal is definitely also a big wound in the fearful avoidant attachment style. And then just when you've had trauma in childhood, when you've had abuse, physical, emotional abuse, you know that there's a reality where other people can hurt you, even the people that you trust the most and that should have been there for you and should have been loving towards you, they can hurt you. So why wouldn't some random person that you meet can hurt you also, you know? You kind of just assume that everybody can and will hurt you at some point. So it makes so much sense that trust is such a hard thing for fearful avoidance, because of the trauma that you've endured. And then there's also trusting life in general, that things will work out. If you've been brought up in an environment where there was a lot of chaos and a lot of unpredictability, and a lot of anger and intimidation, you feeling intimidated by what was happening, a lot of yelling and screaming, and even if it wasn't necessarily physical abuse, that can be very threatening, that can be very scary for a small child. So then you internalize this idea that the world is an unsafe place, and that at any point things can go wrong, because um, what a lot of fearful avoidant parents have is that they can get angry out of nowhere. The unpredictability of it is what is a big cause of the fearful avoidant attachment style. You never really know when that's going to happen. And that's because that parent got dysregulated at that moment. It had nothing to do with you. It was just a parent that was having a really hard time or incapable of regulating their own emotions. And so whenever they were triggered, whatever that was, they would get angry. And that could be a thought that they had, or it could be something that happened at work, or it could be something that their partner, your mom or dad, said. So it could happen out of nowhere, and you're trying to control all of that, and it just doesn't work because it's not your place, it's not your responsibility, and you can't fix that. And that for a child is just a very scary thing, that you don't really have that control over it. So then it makes sense that you adopt this belief that anything can go wrong at any moment. I have to be absolutely perfect and make sure everything is absolutely perfect, so that my parent doesn't get dysregulated and gets angry and a threatening, scary situation ensues. And you take that into adulthood and you project that to the outer world, on the outer world, and on life. And so it's really hard to then just trust that life will work out in your favor, because that's not what you've experienced when you were a child. You have experienced that things can unexpectedly go wrong, and that you have to do everything in your power to make sure that that doesn't happen. And then maybe sometimes you can prevent things from happening. And this is where a lot of perfectionism comes from, that a lot of fearful avoidants tend to struggle with. And it just makes sense. It makes sense that it's hard for you to just trust that things will work out. But just because you've experienced that as a child doesn't mean that that's how life works. You are projecting what you've experienced in childhood with your parents, who are just people. You are projecting that on a lot of things, on life, on the world, on other people. And it's very good to be aware of that, because that will help you to heal, but also to, in those moments, tell your fear brain, okay, I know that this is what you're scared of, but that doesn't mean that what happened to me then is going to happen to me now. I am an adult. I can do different things. I have much more power. I can choose who I hang out with. I can make sure that I create buffers, for instance, so that when things unexpectedly go wrong, at least I know I have money in the bank, or I have friends supporting me, or I have something lined up, so that when something goes wrong, that's okay. So you are now an adult that can do those things, that can create buffers. And when you have that, it will be easier to trust that everything will work out, because you've created that safety for yourself. You are your source of safety now. And that's what a lot of these trust issues kind of come down to, is that underneath all of that, you don't trust yourself. You don't trust that you can handle that. And that also makes sense, because you've experienced this when you were a powerless child. You were powerless. You didn't even have the possibility to go out the door, go to the supermarket and get food for yourself. You were completely dependent on your parents, and they were unpredictable and scary. So you were in a powerless position, but you're not anymore. So to be able to trust other people, let's go into how you can rebuild that trust, how you can heal this. Of course, I will always say, when it comes to healing, having a tool or a modality like EFT, the emotional freedom technique, to release all the trauma and the negative associations and the emotional charge around trust and betrayal, that is just invaluable. That is so valuable, because when you release that, it could be that there's just no issue in that at all anymore. So that would be my first go-to. Have something that can actually release it from your body. So not just talk therapy, but also really releasing it from your body, from your energy system, how you want to call it. just release that trauma from your body, because then you can see that perspective, that it was your parents, that it was your childhood, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to happen now. That is the easiest way, because you don't have to keep working on it or keep reminding yourself of something. Having said that, it also really helps to, when it comes to trusting others, knowing what healthy behavior looks like, so that you can recognize safe people. Fearful avoidance, I think you might tend to want to be able to trust everybody, and the truth is that not everybody is worthy of that trust, and that's okay. People are on their own path, in their own process, and it could be that in a few years they are very trustworthy, but they are just not trustworthy now. So it's not a matter of you working really hard to trust somebody who isn't trustworthy. It's you knowing how to recognize a trustworthy person. And that comes down a lot to the secure attachment style. If you know what that looks like in another person, then you know what to look for as a safe person. So somebody that's honest in their communication, that is honest with their words, so they do what they say they were gonna do, that reacts in the same way consistently, that can emotionally regulate themselves. Those are all signs of safe people, and you deserve to surround yourself with safe people, to have that support system. And then it can become so much easier to trust people, and then you can start healing. So it isn't a matter of being able to trust anybody. It's being able to recognize trustworthy people, and then starting to trust them more and more, and that is healing in and of itself. And then when it comes to trusting life, it is also about people, because as a fearful avoidant, you probably have not developed those skills to recognize trustworthy people, because what you know is people who break your trust and betray you. So it really is kind of like a new skill that you have to develop, and that's fine. That's completely fine. We all have to develop new skills, every single one of us, when we grow up. So that's just a skill that you can develop. And then when it comes to trusting life, also here, it might be that you are trying to just trust life without really building safety for yourself. So in trusting others, you build safety by knowing what a safe person looks like, and knowing what a trustworthy behavior looks like, or a trustworthy person looks like. And in life, it's really hard for anyone to just completely trust that everything will work out. There are people that can do it. I am always amazed by that, and that's amazing if you can. But there are not a lot of people that can just trust that everything will work out when they don't have any safety built in for them. So what I started doing was just very practical. Started thinking, okay, what is the worst case scenario? What if we lose our house? What if something really bad happens? What would be my options? And just writing that down, and having almost like a plan B for when things would go really, really, really wrong. That really helped to know that, okay, even if something really goes wrong, I can handle it. And that builds trust in yourself, that you can handle whenever something goes wrong. Because if you don't do that, and you're trying to just trust that things work out and that life works out, then you kind of have the tendency to want to control everything and want everything to be perfect. And that is a recipe for anxiety. So building buffers for yourself in whatever way possible, it can really help. So that means probably money. For a lot of people, there's a lot of survival fear around money. So if you have any way, even if that means doing a side hustle for a couple of months, any way to have some kind of cash saved just in case something bad happens, that will really help you. Because if you happen to lose your job or something else happens, you know, oh, I can at least be alive for another 3 months, and I have that time to look for another job or figure out a new plan, instead of you just having no money at all, and so you're completely dependent on this job having to go right and you not getting fired. So if you have that little buffer of money, that will help so much in you being able to trust that things will work out. Because you know, if it doesn't, if it happens that it doesn't, you have this little buffer that you can rely on. And you also have this with friends. You know, you are not alone when things happen. You have friends who can help you, who can support you. And if you feel comfortable with that, you can talk to friends about that. Like, what would you do when something goes wrong? And maybe how can we help each other? And just knowing how friends could be there for you in times of distress, that can really be a comforting idea. Um, yeah, and there's so many different ways that you can build buffers for yourself. For instance, I love working in advance with these videos because I just want to make sure, absolutely sure, that I can have a video out every single week for you. So whenever uh, I notice that I'm only ahead 1 or 2 weeks, I kind of get this tense feeling. And I know, oh, okay, I just have to do a lot of videos in one day so that I'm a little bit farther ahead, because I know that if I get sick, for instance, or something happens to me, I won't be able to film videos, and I don't want that. I would feel yeah, I just want to have a video out every single week. So that's also a buffer that I create for myself. If I work 1 to 3 months in advance, I know that I can be sick for 2 weeks and it will be fine. You wouldn't notice. So you can create buffers in all kinds of ways, so that when something happens, it's not that devastating. So it's healing on the one side, on the one hand, and it's also creating that safety for yourself, trusting that you can handle it, building buffers so that you know that you got yourself. You created that safety for yourself. There's a healing aspect, there's a practical aspect. Both of them will really help in healing this trust wound and being able to trust others and trust life in general. Let me know if this was valuable. I really am curious. Let me know in the comments. As always, I am so happy you are here, and I will see you in the next one.
Healed and Happy is a tailor-made online program where me and my team personally guide you through healing the roots of the fearful avoidant attachment style.